Chapter 7 of The Voice of the Lion Was Heard in the Land. A Good Omens fanfiction. Written by A.N.D. Read aloud by SkyAsimaru. If you enjoy this podfic, you can check out the original story on Archive of Our Own. If you would like to hear more of my recordings or see some of my own work, you can find me through the pen and screen name of SkyAsimaru. The voice of the lion was heard in the land. Chapter 7 Paradise Regained. Summary. Don't be foolish, dear boy. Abandoned, Az had started to starve. Locked into quarantine with his husband, Az started to stress cook. It was fun for a while, but Tony wasn't that fond of sourdough, so he was soon casting about for ideas for both of them to work off their nervous energy. He found his big idea abandoned on a side table. The house at Pooh Corner? A bit young for you, Az. Az came out of the kitchen, wiping flour off his hands. Oh, that's a little comfort reading. Winnie the Pooh and I are old friends. Tony froze, staring at Az, book in hand, until Az became nervous. Is something wrong? I can put it back.
Comfort reading! Az, that's it! That's what we can do!
It's what I am doing, dear boy, Az replied, confused.
Not just reading to yourself. Don't you see? You can read to the children.
What children? Tony, we can't go visit hospitals right now. Nobody can.
No, on the internet. You read these stories, I film you. We start a YouTube channel, or put them on Twitter or something. Something safe for children. Something comforting.
Az continued wiping flour, head cocked to one side, thinking. I have missed doing things for children, he admitted finally. Well, I've missed Leo, and that's the same thing. Fireside Stories for Friends was a hit from the first upload. Any faint hope that Az may have put Leo behind him was gone almost immediately. Within a few hours of the premiere episode, the hashtags listening to Leo and Leo_reads were trending worldwide. Leo's old viewership finding themselves desperate for that calm, reassuring voice. The next morning, the newspapers picked up the story and ticked up the view count, with headlines like Lion at Pooh Corner and The Lion Reads Tonight, often not bothering to print the actual show name until the 5th paragraph. Newt set up a dedicated website. Anathema sent them a better camera and basic lighting gear. And Az read on. He read Winnie the Pooh and The House at Pooh Corner, followed by A Little Princess. And then, just before he was due to start Anne of Green Gables, a short video popped up on the Fireside Friends website and social media. I am thankful that so many of my friends out there have enjoyed my stories, Az told the camera, and I am humbled and grateful for all of the letters you have sent me. It was actually emailed to the Fireside Friends website, which meant it was really going to Anathema, but no need to go into that level of detail on camera. Many of you have asked me if I meant what I once said, that all my little friends would still be my friends when they grew up. The answer is, of course. I remember you as fondly as you remember me, and you deserve a spot at my fireside, too. So tonight, after tea time, I'll start a second story time just for you. I'd like to introduce you all to an old friend of mine. His name is Jeeves, and I hope you'll like him as much as I do. Tony took his duties as Az's one-man tech team seriously. He researched website management, video editing, coding. He also started reading the Friends at Fireside emails instead of anathema, which meant he noticed the new trend.
This isn't a book request. This is a help request,
he said, passing his iPad over to Az. Dear friend, I want to help Mum around the house. She's afraid I'll make more work for her because I am only 8. What can I do to help? I'm not supposed to know, but she cries a lot when I'm supposed to be in bed. Oh, Tony, we can't just ignore this. That poor child, that poor woman.
8.
Tony was pondering, tapping on the table.
Capable of washing up, but it won't help Mum any if she's worried about broken dishes.
Laundry? Nothing particularly breakable there. I can do a simple how-to about that, and stress the importance of sorting and reading labels. Az looked at Tony. We're not leaving Mum out. Can you research what helplines are still available in quarantine?
Yeah.
Tony scrolled through.
Here's another one, sort of. Dear Mr. Fell, I grew up listening to your voice. I'm so glad you started recording things again. It makes me feel so much less alone in all of this. I have an odd request, but I hope you'll understand. You had delicious-looking biscuits on a plate beside you when you were reading that Lord Peter Wimsey story, the one about the crosswords. Is it too much to ask for the recipe?
Az was scribbling notes. Okay, basic life skills, a little bit of cooking. Why not? It may be helpful, and a 3rd video series will keep us busy.
What are we going to do if someone asks us for help we can't give?
We'll ask our friends. Az was obviously warming to the idea, even while he sounded it out. We'll read it out on the air, take answers via the website, do a little research, and read the best answers. I'll bet Anathema can get Newton to help with that. The 2 of them have to be as stir-crazy as we are, and he loves learning things.
Life advice with Leo?
Tony joked. Friends helping friends, Az replied firmly. Running the 3 shows under the Fireside Friends umbrella was turning into a full-time job for several people. But even with those sponsors, Az and Tony, and Anathema, approved of, the tiny video company wasn't bringing in enough money for them to live on. Tony researched Patreon and set one up, but Az insisted that it not have expensive tiers because times were so tight. Eventually, they decided on 2 tiers. For £1 a month, it offered a chance to suggest recipes or vote on the next book to be read. For £10 a month, you could see blooper videos. Unfortunately for Tony, Az didn't often mess up his lines. Unfortunately for Az, Tony was determined to ensure constant quality content for the blooper Patreons, no matter what he had to do to get it. Before they wrung each other's necks, Anathema suggested a live stream. The first one was to be free, but they could use it to judge interest in pay shows or alternate Patreon levels. Tony had the camera on a tripod, his iPad propped up next to him to monitor the feed and read the comments, and the scribbled checklist that served as their vague script. He held up fingers to Az. 5, 4, 3. Hello to all my friends who are watching. Az was surprised at how anxious being live on air was making him, but he hid it. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make chocolate almond bark. You only need a few ingredients, and once you know the basic recipe, you can change it up any way you like. Perhaps you would like to send me photos of your favorite creations later. I would love to hear all of your ideas. All right, first you need a bag of chocolate chips, which you will melt in the microwave. Az opened the bag of chocolate chips, which ripped too far too fast, sending chocolate bits skittering across the work surface. He blinked in sudden panic. Oh!
Keep going,
Tony muttered to him. Az said dutifully, looking ruefully at the mess. You see, everyone has little accidents. When it happens to you, what you need to do is take a deep breath. 2 if you have to. He demonstrated with 2 exaggerated rises of his chest. Then calmly clean up the mess. Accidents happen to everyone, even adults, as you've just seen. While Az gently swept the chips on the counter into a cupped hand and checked the floor, Tony checked the scrolling comments. Az knew Tony's anxieties as well as he knew his own. He looked up questioningly. Tony waved his fingers just off camera in what he hoped meant, keep going, it's nothing. Az narrowed his eyes. If all of my friends watching will excuse me for a moment, I think I need to talk to my cameraman. Tony waved a silent no, no, no frantically, drew a thumb across his throat for cut. But Az only got a slightly steelier look, and, when he got close enough, snatched the iPad and backed into camera range before Tony could grab it back. The comments were coming almost too fast to read.
Oh my God, that sounded like Tony! Tony's back! Tony's back!
Did I just hear Simon the Snake? That was definitely Simon.
His real name's Tony Crowley.
Is this part of some perfect plan? Please let it be some perfect plan. Please, 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 we need a perfect plan. That explains 2020. It didn't go as Simon planned. Tony, we missed you. Why are you behind the camera?
How much on Patreon so we can hear Tony again? Simon! Come back, Simon! All is forgiven!
The comments scrolled faster and faster, 2 names standing out from the chaos. Tony, Tony, Tony! Simon, Simon, Simon! Tony, Simon, Tony, Simon, Tony, Simon! Az looked past the camera. It seems our friends have missed you very much. There was the slightest emphasis on our. No, Tony squeaked, backing away quickly, waving his hands. Az knew how much Tony blamed himself for what had happened to Az and to Leo. Az was also a bit of a bastard who'd been very frustrated by Tony's refusal to work with him again. Now, give the audience what it wants. Every actor knows that.
But,
Tony whispered, do you really think I'm not proud to share the screen with you? Don't be foolish, dear boy. The only viewers not deliriously key-smashing their jubilation over the beloved line were the ones screaming and punching the air. The feed flickered and froze, close to overload. Only a few people saw Az focus back on the camera. But while the video was stuttering, the audio was clear. Ah, dear friends, would you like the chocolate melting demonstration to be given by my husband, Tony? The whole website crashed. Those fans who left the feed running or who kept refreshing their screens were rewarded roughly half an hour later when Fireside friends, including live feed, flickered back into life. The still running camera had been obviously abandoned, pointing slightly to the left of the action. Still, the few remaining viewers could see a tidy row of chocolate balls drying on a tray on the countertop. The unopened bag of almonds had been pushed to one side. A now mostly empty bottle of rum in its place. Tony was wiping down the counter with the brisk, fretful motions of a stress cleaner. He could only use one hand, though. His left one was pinned down by Az, who was rubbing his thumb across the back of Tony's hand.
Messed it up, just like I told you I would, Tony was muttering. I told you, I'll just ruin everything you work on.
Nonsense. They've missed you, Tony. Why wouldn't they? Simon was always more popular than Leo.
What are you going to do with the last of the melted chocolate?
Tony asked, avoiding Az's eyes and the subject.
I thought you'd be eating it with a spoon by now.
Oh, I'm going to eat it, just not with a spoon.
What?
Tony stared with wide eyes as Az lifted his hand, gently turning his wrist upwards, slowly tilting the chocolate bowl downwards. This crash kept the website down until morning. At first, Tony started his own separate reading video series, covering picture books and young adult novels, using a prop as his video friend. Adam had assured him he was free to use his old snake puppet from the hospital visits, but Tony didn't feel comfortable with it anymore. With snakes, lions, and, due to unspoken consensus, frogs or toads ruled out, Tony's new on-screen animal sidekick was a remote control parrot, handled by Az, just off camera. The two men drew on their stage experience to work out a wealth of subtle cues to tell Az how to make the parrot behave. But if there was a little subtle revenge for what Tony had done to set up the Patreon blooper tier, at least now there was a wealth of material to post to it. Still, fan pressure, aided and abetted by Az, was on for them to work together to the point that Tony finally agreed.
I bet I know what you're thinking,
Tony mused as he and Az planned a dramatic reading of James Herriot's dog stories. I'm thinking that if this removable highlighter tape removes the print from this book, I'm going to slam back every bit of wine in this flat before crying for a week, Az said distractedly, as he gave his copy the usual script treatment with tape and sticky notes.
I'm thinking how much it's like being back on Leo in the beginning, when it was just the two of us doing everything.
Az looked up. It is like that, isn't it? He put his book down and reached for Tony, which means it's also like falling in love all over again. They did everything they could to lighten the lockdown for their viewers, their friends. They did dramatic readings. They performed two-man plays. They had chats with Leo alumni. For what should have been the Panto season, there was a wildly popular series where where Tony appeared as increasingly outrageous versions of Widow Twanky to correct the fairy tales that Az was trying to read with what really happened. They also did demonstrations. Sometimes it was just a bit of fun, like the time they filmed themselves following badly along with a YouTube watercolor class, laughing at each other all the way, reassuring everyone that you don't have to be perfect to enjoy something, that sometimes you don't even have to be good as long as you enjoy it. Other demos were more useful. Tony demonstrated basic hand sewing, fixing tears, mending seams, making simple face masks. Az showed how to pull a pasta dinner together, using a single pot and ingredients out of the larder, and another on leftover omelet surprise. They even cautiously tried a rerun of the now infamous candy-making class, with Az using half the melted chocolate to make almond bark for the children, and Tony using the other half to show adults how to make rum balls. And throughout it all, they answered letters. "Oh, here's one for me," Az said as he flicked through the email on camera. "Dear Mr. Az, when you taught us how to do laundry, you said it was very important to make sure you wouldn't shrink anything." Az suddenly flushed beet red, but he managed to strangle out, "Is that because you shrunk all of Mr. Tony's trousers?" He cleared his throat, struggling hard to finish. "Signed, Clarissa, age 9.
"Yes," Tony said, grinning serenely. "That's exactly what happened."
The glint in Az's eye should have warned him that retribution was to follow. But Az was mild as milk when he pointed to another email on the iPad a few letters later. "One for you, dear boy."
"Dear Tony, do you need help getting all that tight clothing on and off? What, that's a bit... Signed Hey!"
But it was too late. He'd already read it on the live feed, and Az was smiling, innocent as an angel. "Oh, I have to help him out of those tight trousers every night." Tony glared at Az, who beamed back.
Right, next letter."
It taught them to screen their letters first, which led to a fateful argument.
"We can't read this on air."
"Why ever not? Tony, we can't not answer."
"Az, we have to answer this privately. This kid is gay. He's asking for help in coming out to people who don't want to hear it. Look at what happened when I was outed. Do you want the tabloids to scream that Leo and Simon are
living the dream together, reenacting fan fiction?
Be serious. You've never gone public about our relationship."
"Except for the time I called you my husband and our whole website crashed."
"That wasn't recorded,"
Tony insisted. "I wouldn't be so sure about that. Some of our fans are more savvy than we are. Besides, I think everyone has figured it out already, dear boy." Az stopped joking when he saw Tony starting to shake.
I can't risk. Az, you almost died. You had a complete breakdown, and I was exiled."
Az gathered Tony up in a fierce hug. After a moment, he whispered even more fiercely, "We survived. We survived, and we are together. We only did that because we have friends." He grabbed Tony's shoulders, staring into his eyes. "We cannot leave this poor child alone and friendless, but we cannot answer privately. How many others have been too afraid to write in? How many of them feel all alone?"
What about the backlash?
Tony, what are you so afraid of? It's not as though Gabriel is going to break in here and drag you out during lockdown.
It kind of feels like he might.
Az squeezed his husband reassuringly. It's past time to prove to you that Winker is well and truly out of our lives forever. The letters section of the show tended to come towards the end of the episode and was usually rowdy, full of giggles, and, if Tony or Az thought they'd get away with it, mild innuendo. But this episode started with two very solemn men sitting side by side on the sofa. This quarantine has been very hard on everyone, Az started.
Some people more than others, because they don't feel safe at home,
Tony continued. We've been there. Az took Tony's hand, interlacing their fingers. There was a time not that long ago when someone tried to punish Tony for loving me.
That person didn't think two men should be in love, so they said terrible lies about me and people like me.
Az visibly squeezed Tony's hand, but tearing us apart didn't make us stop loving each other. It just hurt us very badly.
We got through with proper support and help from our friends.
If you need support, if you need a friend, these places can help. If you need someone to talk to, call. If you aren't safe where you are, these shelters are open. They are doing their best to keep the virus out, and they will give you a place to live. All of the names, addresses, phone numbers and emails we're about to give you are in our show notes. Starting in the south, there's... It was a long list. At the end, Tony and Az looked at each other and nodded once. Just know that you are not alone, my dear friends, Az said gently. You need to be safe.
You are not doing anything wrong. You are not being anything wrong.
Never, never, never be afraid to love who you love. For the first time ever on camera, Az and Tony kissed. There was a little bit of backlash. It was thoroughly drowned out by the support they received. The next time Az and Tony appeared on camera, they were wearing their wedding rings. Live action is harder to overdub than animation. That didn't stop former Leo the Lion voice actors from around the world from writing to Az, Tony, and Anathema for permission to run derivative web shows with the appropriate cultural changes. That, too, was resolved on air. If any of our friends from before, Az announced, want to help us carry on our mission to spread help, hope, and kindness in these times, please do so. But we would like it if you would share your video with us.
Please, Tony added. We would love to share your cultures and ideas with our viewers.
Only a handful of videos came in at first. Japanese Leo demonstrated how to fold an origami crane. Saudi Chandra showed how to twist a headscarf into a face mask. But the trickle became a flood when fans around the world started sending in their videos as well. Crafting videos became particular favorites. Az used a Welsh fan video to learn how to knit and started a scarf club among the viewing friends. You can knit along while we read to you. Won't that be soothing? Do send us photos of your scarves to post. Tony was even more ambitious. An American viewer taught him paper piecing, and he embarked on a patchwork lap quilt using his and Az's old shirts and junk mailers cut to size. For one last time, imagine. Imagine the seasons turning. Imagine a scarf, slightly lumpy, being gently wrapped around a lover's neck. Imagine a small quilt, equally imperfect, spread across 2 laps. Imagine a treatment, a vaccine. Imagine the grim numbers falling, 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 until the world finally feels truly safe again. Imagine people emerging to rebuild and resume their lives. All things shall pass, including pandemics. Imagine 2 actors sitting side by side on a sofa, unsure of their future, dialing into a Zoom call. Tony set their view to grid to see everyone. He and Az were in one corner. Anathema and Newton, their arms around each other, were in another. The others, though, why had Adam Young and his parents Arthur and Deidre dialed in? And was that? Yes, it was Pepper. Why was she there? Anathema started the discussion briskly.
Your lockdown show has been incredibly popular.
That's because there's nothing else to watch, Az said, sighing. They'll be off to the movies again now and forget about us.
Not according to the mail I've been getting,
Anathema told him.
People are begging me to keep you 2 on the air.
No can do, Tony said. We need proper work, just like everybody else. Our savings are about to run out, but the bills aren't.
This is why I'm offering proper work,
Anathema told him.
A real show with real wages in a real studio, doing what you've been doing all along. Readings, interviews, demonstrations.
Deidre broke in.
I don't think you've grasped how perfect a family show you've created. It's not too racy for children. It's not too patronizing for adults. It's happy and hopeful and helpful all at once. And it teaches useful skills,
added Newton, who had had to watch the laundry section 3 times to understand why the clothes washer hated him.
It's girl and women friendly,
said Pepper, who had occasionally sent them suggestions, orders really, for books to read and people to interview.
I'm as comfortable letting my daughters watch you as I would have been to have them watch Leo. Don't think I haven't kept score. You've treated girls' books as seriously and as often as boys' books. You've interviewed women in all sorts of fields without making a big creepy deal over their gender. That's what we need more of. You gave me support when I needed it,
Adam told them.
Now I'm in a position to put your lives back just the way you had them. That's why I'm going.
He looked to where his parents and Pepper were placed on his screen.
We're going to fund a full season of your show.
The response to the first episode left Leo in the dust. Every episode started the same way. The music was recorded. Their actions were live. As the piano started to play, Az walked into frame and sat down at his chair gingerly. His hips at 75 weren't what they had been in his 40s. "Everyone is different, and that's okay," he sang lightly, picking a bow tie to put on out of the hundreds that viewers had given to him over the years. An electric guitar came in as the camera shifted to Tony at his dressing table. His posture was straighter after the back surgery, yet he still managed to sit like an abandoned rag doll.
"Everyone is different in their own way," he sang, as the camera focused on him putting the last layer of nail varnish on his pinky. His fingers alternated red and black this episode, their wedding colors. It was their anniversary today. The rest of the cast and crew had chipped in to buy them dinner at the Ritz after filming as a thank you. Everyone said working on the show was like working in paradise. The song went on, tracking them making final preparations as they walked from their stage dressing areas to a living room set. "And we're so glad to welcome you, our friends, again."
Az and Tony finished together, settling down beside each other on the couch. The shelves lining the 3 walls of the set behind them were filled with a cheerful clutter of books and objects. "Today," Az said to the camera, "I will show you how to make a simple tray-bake supper."
"And I will do a review of that new water-permeable nail varnish."
"We're going to talk with our friend Miss Jemison about her new book and dramatize a scene from it.
And finally, we will check in with our young athletes, the ones that, thanks to the generosity of all of you, our friends, we are sponsoring to the next Olympics."
The show always started the same way, and it always ended the same way. "It's always a pleasure to spend time with you," Az told the camera.
"See you again the next time you drop in,"
Tony added. They walked off, hand in hand, as the camera closed in and in and in on the background bookshelves, finally filling the viewers' screens with a photo of 2 much younger men, dancing forever in a frame with the silver label, "Our Wedding Reception." To the left of the frame sat a remote control parrot. But those in the know looked at what sat just to the right of the photograph, the single touch on the set that everyone from Az to Arthur had unanimously insisted upon. A little stuffed lion twined around with a tiny snake. "Once upon a time, the voice of the lion
and the voice of the snake
fell very much in love,
and they lived happily ever after."
The end. Thank you for reading. Please drop by the archive and let the author know what you thought of their work.